Hello everyone, welcome to today's live. My name is Amal Ait Ahsan. I'm a Media Solutions Manager at LinkedIn, based in Dubai. I'm so happy to welcome you straight away from my living room. I'm very excited to go live for our third Women Empowerment Series, part of Women at LinkedIn, our internal resource group. To give you a little bit of background, LinkedIn Women Empowerment Series is an initiative launched back in May with my colleague Lamis. I say hi to her if she's watching. It's a series of webinars that focuses on highlighting women's success stories in the MENA region. Today, I'm super excited and honored to host Her Excellency Dr. Rania Al-Mashat, Minister of International Cooperation for the Arab Republic of Egypt.
Hello, Amal. Pleasure to be with you and everyone who's watching.
Hello, Dr. Rania. It's a real pleasure to have the conversation today with you. I'm really excited, and I'm sure also our audience are excited for our conversation. They have been asking us a lot of questions about it. So for those who don't know, maybe they are outside the region and who might not know Her Excellency, I will give a brief introduction to her career path to date. So Dr. Rania, you were born in Cairo, and you graduated from the American University in Cairo, AUC, in 1995 with a Bachelor of Arts in Economics. Then you moved to the US with your family and enrolled at the University of Maryland, where you did your master's degree and PhD in specializing in international economics with a focus on monetary policy and public debt management. So you started your career as an economist at the IMF, International Monetary Fund, in Washington, D.C. from June 2001 until June 2005. And very inspiring and interesting fact is that you were the youngest person working there at age of 25. So really a great achievement at a young age. And then in August 2005, you returned to Egypt, your home country, where you were invited to help modernize the banking systems, and you worked as sub-governor and the head of the monetary policy department for the Central Bank of Egypt until May 2016. So it's very important role and critical role. And then in 2015 also, you were named one of the most influential, one of the 50 most influential women in the Egyptian economy. So back in August, it seems like in August, there are a lot of career decisions that you've made in your life. I don't know, like we are in August, so we never know what might happen. But in August 2016, you returned to the United States and you were appointed advisor to the chief economist of the IMF. So again, like a lot of back and forth between US and Egypt. And finally, in January 2018, you were appointed Minister of Tourism, Egypt's Minister of Tourism, and you became the first woman to hold the position and Egypt's youngest minister. So currently, you are a Minister of International Cooperation since December 2019. So it's a quite recent role. And also that Dr. Rania, for those who are not following her on LinkedIn, is an active member on our platform. Thank you. I wanted to thank you on behalf of all LinkedIn employees and our management on being an active LinkedIn member, sharing great content when it comes to international economy or also thought leadership and management inspirations. So definitely follow her on LinkedIn. Welcome again, Dr. Rania, to our Women Empowerment Series.
Thank you very much, Amal. It's a pleasure to be here, and I very excited to discuss whatever you want and the audience wants about women empowerment, leadership, focusing on the future always. So I'm all yours.
Great. That's amazing. So just a little bit of housekeeping to our audience. So we'll have a conversation, a chat with Her Excellency, and then you can ask from now on your questions. So 45 minutes will be conversation, and then we'll have a Q&A session, and we'll answer some of your questions. All right. So to start with, Dr. Rania, we have this tradition at LinkedIn. We always ask our guests, and it's something that's not on your LinkedIn profile, if you can share with us. And we make sure that it will be just between us and we won't share it with everyone.
Okay, well, because LinkedIn is a professional network, so maybe some personal things I haven't put on there. So, for example, I write poetry. I love music and songs. So there's not a single word that you can come up with in Arabic or English that I cannot match to a song that I know by heart. I would sing it. I love dancing. And maybe the last thing that is not on my LinkedIn feed is the very famous tweet between myself and as a response to Elon Musk's last
Yes.
conference in Egypt.
Definitely. And by the way, did he respond? Because I saw your tweet, and it got really high engagement. So I don't know if he responded to you or not.
No, not yet.
So I will encourage all our viewers today to go and retweet so that it gets the highest visibility, so that Ellen will reply to Her Excellency. So, but it was really, I really loved that tweet.
Thank you.
So again, like in the beginning, I shared your journey to leadership, and I want to know more. And I'm sure our audiences also I want to learn more about. How was your upbringing? Or how did you plan your career? Was there any turning point that led you to your current position? Were you dreaming as a kid? Usually when we are younger, we always dream about, I don't know, becoming a doctor, or were you always dreaming about embracing a career in public service?
Well, when I was since I was a child, the house is a very academic house. So my father is a political scientist, specializes in national security, and growing up, we always had policymakers in our house. And at that time, the Arab-Israeli conflict was very topical. And so people who were invited to our home for dinners at night, I would wake up in the morning and find them on TV. My father would be on the radio writing articles. And, as a child, I was very impressed by that. These are regular people. And then the next day, they're very famous. And when I started as a kid to see what's common between them, whether men or women, because, they were all academics, so it didn't matter the gender. The one thing in common between all of them, they all had PhDs. So at the age of 7, when they would ask me what you want when you grow up, I would say I want a PhD. And that was a very, they would then the next question from anyone would be, a PhD in what? And I'm like, I don't know, I just want a PhD, because to me, this was the license to become credible, to become, listened to and heard. And therefore, this passion for education, this passion for being an expert in some subject where you can help society was something that I was brought up appreciating and actually trying to pursue. So the other influence, of course, is that all of them, one way or the other, were were related to policy making, and therefore this whole passion of being well educated to be able to serve your country is something that I definitely dreamt of from a younger age.
Yeah, definitely. So, it totally makes sense when we are embraced in an environment where, as you said, they are all like policymakers and all in education. So I think it's very important, and maybe I'm sure it influenced your career path as well. But also, I wanted to ask you a question with regards to. So you started at the IMF at a really young age, 25, and you were the youngest working there. So how is it for you, to impose yourself, or also as a woman? I don't know, maybe you need to and at a younger age, maybe you had to deal with people who were older than you. How you managed to influence people and also build a brand or career at the IMF since you went and came back? So
I think this whole concept of woman versus man is a little bit, I consider myself gender blind. So I have never been confined by gender or age. I always think that competence is really what distinguishes an individual, whether a man or a woman. And that's why, always focusing on your skills, what you add to a table, what you add to a discussion is really what is extremely important and a priority. Because I wanted to do a PhD since I was very young, so I graduated from the American University in Cairo in June 1995, and I was on a plane to Washington, D.C. on July 4th, 1995. And I started my master's and PhD in August, another very important month, or another coincidence in August. Since you mentioned it, I didn't think about it, but it seems to be maybe a lucky month. So I started right away, and I graduated at the age of 20, and I really wanted to have my PhD finished by the age of 25. That was one of my, I don't know why I put that in my mind, but I just thought, okay, let me get this thing that I want out of the way, and then, the whole world will be mine. So as a PhD student, I did a summer internship 1 year at the World Bank, and then the following year at the IMF. This was in 1998. And I was really the youngest summer intern probably that they had. And it was fascinating that, 1998 was the time of the Russian crisis. And at the time, the deputy managing director of the IMF was Stanley Fischer, who is very well known in macroeconomics. And as a graduate student, we read his work and study it. So to be in a room with Stanley Fischer and see how impactful you can be in basically safeguarding financial stability and playing a role, because at the end of the day, IMF is a very big international institution with the objective of supporting governments when it comes to policy making related to monetary policy and financial stability. And at the same year, Joe Stiglitz was the chief economist at the World Bank. So as a summer intern in 1998, I was sitting in meetings with, attending these seminars or these town hall meetings with Stan Fischer one time and with Stiglitz the other time. So even though I always wanted to serve my country, I was saying, if I get a job with the IMF, I would probably like to stay in the US a little bit longer to basically get that expertise. So rightly so, after I defended my thesis, I joined the IMF. And, this concept of being the youngest was not really on my mind, and being a woman was not really on my mind. But what was very important is that I am an economist, so I need to know my subject matter very well. It's an international institution, so it has guidelines with respect to teamwork. We go on missions together. Everybody complements everybody else to produce, at the end of the day, a common product that provides advice to a country or, providing a solution to a problem. So all of this is very important, that when you are doing your work, you have to do it with passion. It shows if you're doing something that you love and you believe in versus just doing it because it's an assignment. And I think that is really what reflects in my work in general. So from just being a summer intern to being an economist later, etc., every time I just put myself into it and my soul into it, and that's how you leave a good impression, and it brings me to my sort of pillars of success, which I call the 4 C's. And because in 2005, when I was leaving the IMF to go back to Cairo as sub-governor of the central bank, my colleagues at the IMF, were like very happy for me, of course, because as an international economist, all of us at the IMF, everybody wants to go and serve their own country in some way, and that was, of course, my childhood dream as well. But they started asking me, Rania, are you worried going back because you're a woman and blah, blah, blah? And I was like, guys, Egypt is known for a history of females working in public service. My whole family, my aunts and so on, are work in the one way or the other. But also the history, they serve the country. But I told them it's not really the gender which might be an issue, maybe the seniority, because at the time I was going back at the age of 30. And then I told them, there are 4 principles of success in my mind, and they are competence. That's number 1. And competence here has to go with, what you learn, your education. So education is the beginning, but the knowledge and the expertise means that you have to be very mindful in every step of your career to be able to gain from whatever you're doing. Sometimes people feel that they're stuck, and you should not take that stuck feeling as a way to hold you back. Try and gain competence from and expertise from whatever you're doing. Second comes connections. Connections are extremely, extremely important. And connections, if you're competent, connections serve you, because when you're competent, people are connected to you and they want to connect you to more people, and they want to show off that they know a competent person. And, it's a snowball sort of thing. But connections on their own without being competent only take you so far. And then confidence, and you have to be confident with your subject matter. And there's a very, very thin line between confidence and arrogance. If your ego is too much, overwhelming, and if you are not competent enough, you come across as being very arrogant, and that is not confident in any way. So competence pushes your confidence, and then finally charm. And charm here is the shorthand of emotional intelligence. How do you act in certain circumstances? In many cases, I was a boss for people who are older than me, and in that case, you have to be charming. You have to see, what is it that they benefit through your vision and through your the spillover effect that they get from you, and then. Also, in many cases, there might be circumstances that are very intimidating. So, what is that emotional intelligence or that charm you bring in, so that you can really make a mark in whatever meeting you are in. So those are my 4 principles, really: competence, connections, confidence, and charm. My 4 C's.
Yeah, definitely. So these are like guiding principles, I think, for everyone, especially thinking nowadays with the current situation, and also for our viewers who are watching us today. Maybe they are at different stages of their career, maybe young or fresh graduates, or it can be even seasoned professional, but they need, maybe they are thinking about changing a career, or they lost their jobs. I think these 4 principles and the 4 key elements are very helpful, and for anyone, like despite the industry and despite the seniority, because these are like a guiding north for success for every professional. So going back to the current situation, Dr. Rania, I would love to hear your thoughts. So recently, like you started as a minister in December 2019, Minister of International Cooperation, and then like few months later, the coronavirus, the COVID-19 pandemic hit. As a leader, how you can create a strong narrative actually in times of uncertainty, where things are like we lived and we are still living a crisis globally. So can you elaborate on that and also describe a little bit what's your leadership style, so that we can understand how you are actually navigating through this time of uncertainty?
Well, maybe I go before Minister of International Cooperation to being Egypt's first female Minister of Tourism, because I took over this file in January 2018 as Minister of Tourism. And this was a time when Egypt was, still in the international market on tourism, trying to make a mark or get back, a comeback. And, what I want to tell viewers is take risks. Tourism was not a sector that I knew anything about. But at the time, political leadership wanted it to be handled and managed or led by an economist, because it's one of the very important sectors contributing to GDP and contributing to employment. So I was pushed out of my comfort zone in the sense that, I had to leave my job abruptly at the IMF as, advisor to the chief economist, go back to Egypt, engage with people I don't know, with a field that I'm not. This also helped later on as Minister of International Cooperation is you have to know who your stakeholders are. For any sector, there's a number of stakeholders you have to deal with. Public sector, private sector, citizens, civil society, parliament. Every stakeholder has certain interests. Every stakeholder has certain objectives that they want to reach. Second, you have to be very inclusive. Everybody has to be, feeling a shared ownership and shared responsibility. And above all of this, you have to have a very clear vision, and you have to be able to sell that vision to the people who work with you, which are your staff, your team. And then you have to mobilize the stakeholders around that vision in order to push that vision forward. And given my training, whether academically or in practice, the shorthand of all of this is to create a policy framework. And a policy framework is basically, you have reforms, which is a continuous process. And for every reform, you clearly identify the objective, the target, and then lay out how you're going to achieve that target. You do that transparently. You do that with legitimacy. So in the case of tourism, it was launched from the parliament, the private sector was involved, and so on. And we were able to achieve the highest revenues in Egypt's history in 2019. December 2019, I was asked to become a Minister of International Tourism. And as you rightly pointed out, 2 months later, COVID hit. And what was very important early on, and this was before COVID, is to, again, announce what the vision of this ministry is, given the mandate that it's, there is a presidential decree that explains what the ministry does. But that had to be translated into a shorthand vision that the team within the ministry understands, is mobilized around. And because international cooperation means that you are not just dealing internally, but you're dealing really with the world. There is a multilateral platform. And when you have that sort of platform, it's very important that, again, you are transparent, you are inclusive. And this is what we were, I was able to do here in the ministry. We have, the shorthand of what this ministry does is really is economic diplomacy. And there are pillars of economic diplomacy that we are pushing. They include, multi-stakeholder platforms. So we have, line ministries along with international community trying to understand what our needs are, where everyone can come and contribute. Then we have SDGs are so important for all countries. So this official financing that comes through the Ministry of International Cooperation, how is it directed to serve the country through the SDGs? So we do a ODA SDG mapping. And then finally comes the transparency part. How do you package that into a narrative that is appealing, well understood, serves the country on the global stage and domestically? And that's where we have P and PMP. So in addition to the 4 Cs, now we have P and PMP, and they're not private-public partnership, but they are people and projects and purpose. So that's really the way we try to explain economic diplomacy in a contemporary and modern way through our partnerships with the international community, whether they're bilateral or multilateral development partners. On the COVID situation, of course, this hit all countries at once, and as policymakers globally, this was an issue that we have never been tested on before.
Yeah.
And I just take this opportunity to explain that Egypt entered this crisis with very strong fiscal and foreign exchange buffers, and that's because we had done reforms between 2016 and 2019. Of course, I've been in government in different ways since 2005, and the reform process has been going on since then. And reforms are a continuous process. You never, even as an individual, reforms. You keep on reforming yourself. You're so, we can go into meditation and soul searching and soul So on an individual level, you're reforming. On a family level, people reform. On a community level, people reform. On a nation level, reform is continuous. And what was very important for, in my role during COVID is multilateralism continues to be important, continues to be that countries are judged by their GDP only, or by their strength when it comes to economy, politics, or military. Really, multilateralism means that every country comes to the table with its own experience, with its own initial condition, and it's a platform where different countries are able to participate and have a voice. So I think what was very, very important during COVID is that we are able to tell Egypt's story in a way which is very factual. We've been tested in the sense that me and my colleagues had to innovate very quickly. For example, we have a very big bureaucracy, and all of us had to start working from home. In my ministry, people have been at home since March 17th, but we've been able to work seamlessly, and everybody has been contributing. Something else which is very important is for the different sectors to be able to cooperate with the line ministries to show what are the needs that we are looking for, to be able to meet our SDG agenda and to tell the world that we are not overlooking this because of whatever health crisis that we are facing. So it's been a very unique and novel experience for all countries. And I think for us who are living during this period, whether it's the government, public sector, or civil society, or citizens, everybody has learned a great deal and has been able to participate and contribute to ensure that we are able to pass through it.
All right, great. So definitely, Dr. Rania, I think as you mentioned, we have all, I think, been forced through this situation to innovate and to be. I've seen a lot of companies also go through digital transformation thanks to COVID-19. So I think from an economic perspective, a lot of things will happen in the future. But again, like, we are a human being, and we know also, we want also to have some sense of certainty or predictions or forecasts on what will happen in the future. And I read recently the report of IMF on the outlook report for the Middle East and the Central Asia region. So the growth is projected at minus 4.7% in 2020. So how do you see the recovery post-COVID-19 for countries and economies in MENA? So I know you talked about you are very attached to SDG and also your strategy, like the PP's strategy, but in case, like, for in the MENA region, like for countries, how do you see the future in the coming month or year?
The projections for the region are, as you mentioned, there's a contraction globally. This is called or characterized by the IMF as the Great Lockdown, right? Yeah. So all countries are being affected. Egypt is the country that has a positive GDP projection, so that's it stands out in that sense. But I think that there are many things that we take for granted and what we think is business as usual that is going to change. So, for instance, more emphasis on digital skills, more emphasis on being able to work from home. The importance of those who are going to school to think about the skills that are required now by different employers. So there's a lot that is being rethought, and what's important from a policy perspective is to internalize this into the policy framework. So, for instance, this morning I was in the meeting on what we call the Education Development Fund. And there we were discussing, and now we are trying to increase the number of technical schools and make sure that the tutors are have capacity building in a certain way, so that those who are gaining or attending these schools get the skills that equip them for the post-COVID world. So that's something very important. Something else that we were pushed to think about and do to make sure that the economy moves ahead is that, the purchasing power of consumers, as well as the liquidity that firms have, continues. So there's been a host of policies undertaken by the Ministry of Finance and the central bank to basically push us going forward. So I think that the what is extremely important, and this is why I said out post-COVID, is how much they have basically implemented during this period for the future, not just to mitigate the health risk, but also to maintain this trade-off between what is known as life and livelihood, or another way that was also mentioned is to flatten both the health curve, but also to flatten basically the recession. And that is by endorsing monetary, fiscal, as well as structural reforms, which are extremely important to be able to push post-COVID. And the structural reforms that we have been able to do during this period include formalizing some of the informal sector, making sure that the safety nets are widened, push the financial inclusion and digitization agenda, making sure that women in the COVID situation, because they're a vulnerable group, are not as adversely affected, but to have mitigation impact. So there's so much that every country has to focus on, given its initial condition, but have like a view on the medium term and where it wants to go. It hasn't been easy, and every country has been different because the extent and the magnitude have been different. But I think for the Egypt case, we will come out of this hopefully with a story that is one of robust performance.
Yeah, great. And also I want to, since you talked a lot about skills, upskilling, also the workforce and the digitization, and also education. So I know it's a key sector, and you've mentioned it a lot in articles or interviews, the importance of education to everyone, but more specifically also to women, to upskills and close a little bit the gap in the workforce. So how do you see actually women who are watching us, or also men, how they can focus on their education, knowing that a lot of the skills that are needed now don't exist and won't exist maybe also in the future?
Well, before I answer your question, maybe something to highlight. The number of women in the region, and in Egypt particularly, that have education certificates is quite high, right? Yeah. But the issue has been their accessibility to the labor force, their economic empowerment. And that's why most recently with the World Economic Forum and the National Council for Women, Egypt has become the first country in Africa and the Middle East and North Africa region to launch Closing the Gender Gap Accelerator. And that is a public-private platform that pushes a reform agenda on women empowerment. Women participation in the labor force is extremely important. It's macro-critical. If we have parity, for instance, in Egypt when it comes to employment for women, our GDP rises by 34%. So COVID, a way to overcome the implications, the economic implications of COVID, is to have more women in the labor force. It increases productivity. It actually increases even the wages for men. So that is just at the outset, this concept of, focusing and trying to have SDG 5, which is an important SDG, at the forefront of what the government with the private sector are trying to do. So that's number one. When it comes to the skills and so forth, today with the internet, the online courses, for instance, when I look at myself in university, or even when I was doing my PhD, emails were still new and the internet was still new. Today, you are able to get online courses. You're able to study trends and know from different surveys what employers are looking for. So there is that access to the information of what is needed. And what is quite important for everyone listening is that do not feel confined to what you know now. Try to increase that, diversify it. And I think there are different platforms that exist for people to try and gain more skills, get more expertise on certain things. And maybe one thing in one of my leadership courses that I learned is don't make your story box your story coffin, which means that you can always create your new story, and that new story means through a different certificate, through a different engagement when it comes to training. Explore with different jobs. Don't feel that you are stuck in some place. Take some risks. So these are information today, and the access to that information. I think individuals, whether men or women, have a better understanding of what employers are looking for. And I think that provides for a way to understand what skills different jobs will need. And of course, the online platforms today are very important. This is an opportunity of creating more jobs, notwithstanding, of course, how machines and artificial intelligence could affect some of the labor force.
Yeah. Sounds great. So just to a small anecdote for also people who might not know this, Dr. Rania, that back in AUC, I remember you said that you enrolled into computer science at some point, and then you didn't like it.
Yeah, well, a very innocent 16-year-old, like any 16-year-old, influenced by their parents and the preferences of their parents. So at that time, this was in 1991, and computer was still very new, and of course, every parent's dream was, oh my God, you need a job afterwards, and computer is going to be the knowledge and the language of the decade. So you have to do computer science. So given that, my grades were always very high, so I went into computer science, and I actually spent 2 years as a computer science major. But then I would, and of course my GPA was 4.0, but I would sit down and really not do anything related to computer science unless I had an assignment. And to me, it was like, okay, now if I graduate and have a programming job, I will be so uninnovative. I would just be responding to a request. And to me, that is not something that satisfies. I have to be passionate about, trying to innovate in a job that you're doing. You have to love it. So I didn't really love it that much. And I remember when I was leaving computer science to pursue another field, my professors were very upset. And it was like, you're doing great. Why do you want to move? And I was like, I really don't have a passion for it. So, the maybe the lesson for everyone here is do something that you love, and it shows regardless of what it is. If you have passion for something, it shows on the quality of your product. It shows on the quality of your contribution, and that is how you create a niche for yourself, regardless of what field it is.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more, especially having in mind the 4 C's. I mean, everything makes sense. So you need to have a background, let's say a baggage with you, plus also the passion. So, and especially nowadays, we spend a lot of time at work, and now also work space move to our home. So we definitely need to do something that we are passionate about. So I'm checking the time, and our cautious also of the time. So I will ask you the last question before we open it to our audience. So what would be your career advice or personal advice to our viewers today when it comes to career, or something that, especially in current situation, a lot of people, we are all at some point stressed or living a difficult time. What would be your advice or message that you want the audience to live with?
So, when people look at my career and where I am today, and of course with all the different posts on Instagram and LinkedIn and Twitter and so forth, everybody sees a fantastic picture, and they feel that it's just an outcome of of being maybe smart and lucky. But what is not seen in all of that is that it's been a journey that has also not been always very rosy. There are situations where you feel upset, situations where you feel you could do better. So I think the advice there is, and I have different quotes that I put on my different social media accounts, is always set your intention when you're doing something. It's very, very important. Second is be very authentic in everything you do. And here comes the idea of the passion. You have to be present in every moment and realize that there's nothing you cannot change yourself. It is always inside you. I remember there's a quote I think that I put on March 8th, which was the International Women's Day. And it's like, don't feel intimidated by circumstances, and just believe in yourself, and know that everything breathe, think. There are problems every day, and you will be tested every day, regardless whether you're a graduate student, you're an intern, you're an economist, you're a minister. You're tested all the time. And the idea is to sit down with yourself, understand that there's no problem that cannot be solved, put your whole heart into it, set your intention properly, and things will work out.
Okay. That's amazing. And definitely, I'm thinking also about young graduates who maybe graduated this year, and see that they are in 2020. Maybe they think that it's not the best year. And I really liked also the message that you sent to AUC graduates. So I think for everyone who didn't see that message that Dr. Rania delivered to AUC graduates, go check it out. It's very inspiring. I'm not a graduate, but it inspired me as well. So I think there was a really good message behind it.
It wasn't only addressed to AUC graduates. It was actually based on a request from high school students who wanted, they didn't have a commencement, so they sent me an Instagram message, and we responded to that. And I think that in periods of transition, big ones like we are living in right now, we used to read about them in books, and sometimes life looks a little bit boring, nothing changes. So I think we've all got so much excitement, and anything beyond normal happened in 2020. So I think, we should just take it as it is, be happy with the contributions we've been able to make, even on a citizen level. If you're wearing your mask and keeping your hygiene and washing your hands, well, that's a contribution you made to humanity, really. So, think about it, contemplate. There is a tomorrow, and things change overnight. So you'll never be stuck in one position unless you really want to be stuck in one position. So anyway, be optimistic, look forward, and what comes tomorrow will definitely be better.
Definitely, great message to end our conversation. So now we'll open it for questions from our audience. So the first question that we get asked is, how do you react to criticism?
Criticism. It's been a while since I've heard criticism, and that's actually more dangerous than being criticized. And when I was leaving the IMF to become Minister of International Cooperation, I remember Madame Lagarde, who's now the head of the ECB, but she used to be the managing director of the IMF at the time. She sent me an email with a few commandments, things to watch out for. And the first thing she said, don't fall for flatter. So I think what's more dangerous than criticism is, with all the flattering that you get, you basically get, it works on your ego. So you have to always put yourself in check and realize that nothing is for granted. The only way to continue being, doing well and being on the top is by the amount of effort you exert. So every moment in time, you have to work hard. You have to, maintaining success is more important, is more difficult actually than reaching success. And that is something that I tell I'm my biggest critic, and also my mother. So I always watch out to what she has to say.
Yeah, it's very important to listen to moms. So they always have good advice. So the second question is, how do you keep yourself motivated?
That is, I have different people I look up to, and different life stories that I like to that inspire me. But I think the person I compete with the most is myself. And so I'm always chasing myself in some sense. And that's really what, there's always space to do better. There's always space to reform something. There's always space to contribute. So for instance, if I, took over Ministry of Tourism, I changed things there. When I take over now international cooperation, I'm changing things there. You sort of become a disruptor in some way, and try and contribute and add. And I think what's very important for anyone is to always keep your exposure and never be confined with a location or with a certain file. Try and see, the world is very big, and there's so much going on, and there are a lot of synergies between different fields. So I think one way to stay motivated is so many experiences that one can learn from.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much, Dr. Rania, for today's conversation. I mean, it was very. I personally found it very inspiring, and you shared like a lot of great information, inspiration to our audience. Would like to thank you personally, also on behalf of LinkedIn, for taking your time, and also for being a great member on our platform, like a great influencer as well. So you have more than 78,000 followers on our platform. So for those who are not following Her Excellency, please follow her. So she shares a lot of insights and tips, whether for leadership, and also her interviews that she does, and many more. So definitely go and follow her on LinkedIn, and also on other platforms. She's very active on social media, and it's really refreshing. So I think in our region, Dr. Rania, this is something that we need, like to have role models, someone to look up to, and especially someone working in public service. It's very helpful, and impact. It's not only in Egypt, you are impacting a lot of people also outside the region and also globally. So thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much. And just, one thing which is important, this whole concept of being influencing beyond borders was never meant as an objective in itself. But what I can say is by setting the intention and trying to do a good job in what I'm doing, I'm really just doing my job, but I'm trying to do it to the best of my ability. And in doing that, you are able to, and this applies for anyone. Everybody is their own leader in some sense, and if you set your intention properly, work hard, keep your exposure, try and deal with people and connect. I believe that everyone can really be an influencer in their own right. So this is something that also. You don't have to be a minister to be influencing others. You don't have to, so on. But on each and every stage, you are an influencer, and the person you need to lead the most is yourself. So watch out for your ego, work hard, focus on the 4 C's, and always, at any moment of despair, know that there's a better tomorrow.
Definitely. What a great message, to end our session. Very positive, and I'm sure our audience found it very, very useful. Thanks a lot again, Dr. Rania, and thank you also to all our viewers. You can rewatch the video and also the live and replay on LinkedIn, and stay safe. And I wish you all the best, and have a nice week, everyone.